everybody. Thanks for coming. I'd like to start today with my vision statement as an educator. So my vision is that students will enjoy coming to my classroom. They will listen with intent, put forth a good faith effort into mastering the content at hand, and ask meaningful questions to further their understanding. My vision is to be a leader for those around me, including my colleagues. I envision my workplace to be one where not only do we excel as a department in providing quality instructions to young adults, but we also congratulate each other on personal accomplishments outside of the classroom. My vision is for the schoolhouse to feel like family all around. So with that in mind, let's talk about the agenda first. So discuss the vision, identify the need for implementation strategy, the strategy I selected and why, research-based articles that led me to that strategy, the actual implementation, data and student samples, the next steps, and then my reflection. So with that vision statement in mind, I came up with something that I felt was a need for my students. And that need was specifically in my 6th period with their test scores as well as their behavior. So with my 6th period, I've noticed that they score significantly below the average of all of my other classes, and their behavior at the end of the day is always very hard to handle. So that was the problem that I wanted to implement a strategy to try to fix. So the strategy I selected was Desmos. Some advantages of Desmos are it's very engaging and rigorous content. The school actually just recently purchased the Desmos curriculum for us to use, so that's also an advantage. Lessons are formulated from 8th grade standards, and so it's a very reliable source, and it's at their fingertips. It's on their Chromebook. So and I also put in here a quote from one of the research articles that I found. That's another advantage. It says, Desmos helps you create a community of learners in your classroom. Wow, who wouldn't want that? Some disadvantages to maybe using Desmos is students will be on their Chromebook often, and then it wasn't free. We did have to pay for it. So a couple of small disadvantages. These are the articles, the research articles that I found to support me using Desmos as my implementation. It's called Sustaining Cognitive Demand with Desmos Technology and Building Community with Desmos. Both were very supportive of using Desmos in the classroom. So my implementation and how it went. Delaney and Kinsey from that article say that Desmos is very effective if delivered properly by the teacher. So these researchers suggest that open-ended delivery produces better cognitive demand. So with that in mind, that's how I went about choosing and assigning their Desmos work. On 2 different days throughout the unit, students were assigned 2 Desmos activities to work through at their own pace with teacher support. On the days Desmos was implemented, class was completely student-centered. The students led the class that day and had complete ownership of their own learning. And students were also on task and so invested in their work. Having a rich, engaging task proves to settle even your most social groups. So it not only helped with behavior, but it also, using an open-ended delivery, like the researchers said, it did produce better cognitive demand, which we'll get to whenever I show the data, which is right here. Here's the data. Please note that these averages are before reteach opportunities. So this is from our functions unit test 1. 6th period scored an average of a 56%. Functions unit 2 test, they scored an average of a 57%. This is last year's 6th period, so totally different students. On the systems of equations test, they averaged a 45%. That was last year. And then this year, with implementation of Desmos and different students, they averaged a 60%. So the Desmos implementation does show growth across the board. Okay, here's some data and student samples. This is from the first activity we did. Students were paired up, and it's very much like Guess Who. So a student would pick a graph off the screen, and the other students would have to ask questions to try to narrow down which graph their partner chose. So they had to ask questions to try to narrow down the graphs. I was really impressed with their level of questioning and their use of vocabulary here. This is the second activity. It was a little bit more mathy. We actually used some algebra in this. And this is just one of the questions that was on the screen, asking students to put in their own words what Cameron's next step should be. And again, very impressed with the level of thought here and the use of vocabulary. Okay, so my next steps for my students. Next, my students will be supported in their learning of systems of equations with a reteach. This reteach will provide options for students based on mastery. So one of those options will be Desmos. Another option may be Delta Math or small group paper and pencil for my lower achieving students. My next steps as an educator is to explore Desmos further to see what else it has to offer, and to become distinguished at planning out my units to include Desmos enrichment activities. In reflection, with the use of Desmos, I saw an increase in student engagement, good quality questioning amongst peers, as well as good quality student discourse. I'm pleased to see growth in both overall average as well as behavior in the classroom. And the students loved it. Something students love to do is something that I think is worth investing your time in. So definitely Desmos has been a great investment all the way around. And these are the references for the research article. Thank you all for your time.